will be available. Share my screen. And what I have up right now, so yeah, again, the lab is posted under this, the topic 9 folder. There's this lab war dialing. We're going to be doing something called war dialing today. And the idea is that you are going to count the total number of computers in North Korea connected to the internet. And in order to do that, we're going to need to just know a little bit more about how the internet works first. And this thing like war dialing, it sounds scary, but it's something that is totally acceptable in the computer science world. Google does it all the time. So not a bad thing. The I guess the motivation we started talking about before is that like if Facebook goes down, if a company goes down, how does that happen? And the first thing that I wanted us to take a look at is this map of cables connecting everywhere in the world. That a lot of people think that if you're like connecting from the US to China, that you're maybe going through satellites or something, and it's less than 1% of the bandwidth, way less than 1% between the US and Asia is going through satellites. Satellites are not nearly as good as cables, and so people literally have strung cables all the way across the Atlantic or Pacific Oceans in order to connect the countries. That question?
I don't know if you have an answer to this, but why are there so many like within country like cross-sea cables? Like if you look at Houston to New Orleans,
yes,
or like within Finland to small in Slovenia.
It's a good question. So the question is like, it makes sense that New York over here, in order to talk to London, you have to have an undersea cable. Why would you have an undersea cable like between all these places in Greenland or like over here in the Gulf of Mexico? And it turns out like, I know there's people who live between these two things that wanted to be connected, and whoever was laying this cable didn't want to have to purchase all those houses and bulldoze them, and that's a lot of work, but laying undersea cables is actually, it's not cheap in absolute terms, but it's a lot cheaper than land cables most of the time.
Did anyone else know?
No. Also, wasn't like there one built between like Chicago and New York just for like trading?
Yeah, so they're very famous high frequency trading sort of thing that there was a cable like between New York and Chicago originally that kind of like the internet kind of routed around going down, something like that. And that was adding microseconds to their high frequency trading time. And so an enterprising high frequency trading firm decided to just build a straight shot cable there going at the speed of light instead of like half the speed of light, and made I don't know how much billions of dollars being able to beat everybody to the market that way. Yeah, so here, let's go over to Pacific Ocean a little bit. Lots and lots of cables connecting everything together. I think it's like pretty amazing that there's really like, there's less than 20 or so cables that connect the United States and China. And anytime you visit like a web page in China, or more often if somebody in China visits a web page in the US, there's only like 20 cables they're going through.
Are they underground, or are they just like floating in the ocean?
Yeah, so we have some pictures here of how these cables get laid. They're just really big boats that have really big spools of cable on them that just travel across, and then this cable sits on the bottom of the ocean. This picture right here, to get a sense of the size, like those are people right there. This is a giant spool of cable. This spool is multiple stories tall. It's probably 5 or 6 stories tall, maybe 100 feet. And this would not be enough. This would like, I don't know, maybe get you across a big lake. It's not at all enough for like the Pacific Ocean. So for the Pacific Ocean, you'd have a fleet of these boats going, and then after one spool runs out, they would connect them together and then keep going. Yeah, I'll start this way and go along. Yeah, Jack.
Do they ever snap?
Oh, so do they ever snap? Turns out that sharks like to chew on cables.
Oh.
So that's one of the Thailand, a couple Yeah, so Thailand is not an island, but all of their connections to the internet go through undersea cables because it's surrounded by jungle and it's a lot easier to lay cables in the forest than it is in the jungle. And it turns out shark ate one of their cables a couple of years ago, and Thailand got disconnected from the internet for a couple of weeks because of that. Yeah.
And then do they have to like replace the entire cable?
And so they don't have to replace the entire cable. Anywhere sharks can go, people can go with enough equipment. So they'll just go down there. And they have like little repeater things on there. So you have a little bit of an idea, like you have this mile-long range that you know the break happened in. But yeah, Jackson.
Have there been any attempts to put people with malicious intent to go and cut these?
So can we cut them? Let's see. So like literally when the cable comes up onto land, this is what it looks like. There's a picture from San Francisco somewhere about one of these cables going to the Pacific Ocean. And so if you were an enterprising terrorist who wanted to damage the US economy or who wanted to, I don't know, instigate some sort of internet outage, all you have to do is go over there. You can't just use ordinary bolt cutters to cut this thing because it's like a foot thick, but go with a chainsaw and you can disconnect people from the country, from the internet. The question is, who pays for this? So recently, actually, there was an article published just this week sometime about how Google owns about 10% of all of these undersea cables, that they have a particular interest in getting people connected to the internet since they run half the internet. And but most of these, like the original cables were like national projects, like US and China getting together saying, hey, we want to actually be able to communicate with each other. And so that was like 90% US funded, 10% Chinese funded. Let's build this thing together. The vast majority of these are like government projects like that. Good questions. Let's see. So in terms of, yeah, cutting cables, there's another famous incident. So up here is the Sea of Okhotsk, and you can see there's a couple of big undersea cables here. And back in the 1970s and 80s, the US sent a submarine over here to put a wiretap on one of these cables, that these cables are connecting Russian military bases. And what that wiretap looks like is this thing right here. This is the submarine that went over there and put this wiretapping device over there. They'd have to go there like every month to collect the cassette tapes that were recording all the conversations and put in new cassette tapes. And we knew about this undersea cable because there were just literally signs on the side of the ocean, on the shores, saying there's an undersea cable here. All undersea cables have to have those signs because otherwise boats would put their anchors down and tear up the cables. And so this device here was there for about 20 years, recording like all sorts of top secret Soviet military communications. The US spent on the order of like between 100 and $200 billion on this operation. And it was eventually discovered because some person who was working at the NSA was behind on their gambling debts. And so for $20,000, they sold all the information to the Soviet Union. And so if at any point you're interested in getting a like security clearance with the government, so yeah, I know one of the other labs mentioned that like the government's particularly interested in your private life about not having affairs and things, because that can lead to secrets being leaked. But you're also like, if they're interested in your gambling habits, that if you're a frequenter of Vegas, they will not give you a clearance. Or if you have any significant debts outside of student loans, then they won't give you a clearance, because the vast majority of like operations like this that have been discovered is because somebody's been behind on their debts, and they just want like a very, very small amount of money compared to what's the government's invested in something. I saw hands.
I think I missed like the cable part of it, like, when I'm, like, are there not, like, if there's so much information, are there not like any like guards or like any physical people that are like
Yeah,
over?
so like, I mean, with that submarine, it came in through here, and it was right in here that it put the tap on this cable. This stretch of land over here, it's like 50 miles or something. So, I mean, if there was a big surface ship going through, somebody would notice that, but the submarine's all underwater, and you don't have like people going around underwater all the time looking at these things. So it's pretty hard to discover. So yeah, that was, I don't know, back in the day, wiretapping happened in the middle of the cables. These days, so if we come back over here to where these all connect to the US, you can see there's a whole bunch of connections over here in like San Francisco area. And Los Angeles. San Francisco is the most famous one. There's all those connections come to this room 641A, which is operated by the National Security Agency. This is actually a picture of the door where all those cables connect inside of. And you can see that there is no handle on this door. This is like not in a government building anywhere. This is just inside the offices of AT&T. And inside this room right here is the NSA special section of AT&T that nobody's allowed inside of. And AT&T just has, they're not required legally, but they are just by the goodness of their heart offering up all the internet traffic that goes through their through San Francisco. They're sharing it with the NSA so the NSA can do whatever they want with it. This was known about like long before Snowden, so revealed in 2003, 2006. Snowden was 2014, and people like even before this time, the people in security world sort of knew that something like this must be going on. And so like this is the most famous one of these tap rooms, but all of these locations where undersea cables intersect the US, the NSA is known to have a spot here. Listening to that. If you use Skype at all, Microsoft, when Microsoft purchased Skype, Skype used to be like peer-to-peer, fully encrypted. When Microsoft purchased Skype, all the connections suddenly got routed through Seattle over here in a place where the NSA is known to have a tap room at. And so it's pretty well understood that all Skype conversations are easily monitored by the NSA. Zoom's a little bit more, I don't know, not exactly known, but it's, I would assume that the NSA has a similar setup with wherever the Zoom stuff goes to. Yeah, so what Snowden revealed was this PRISM operation that's like details all of those tap rooms. And this is a place called the Utah Data Center where the NSA sends all of their information to from those rooms. This is, again, like just publicly available information about this building. If you typed in on Google Maps or Google Images, Utah Data Center, you can get a bunch of pictures of it. Here's its exact location on Google Maps. This is where the NSA is collecting all this information and doing whatever they do with it. So here's the, I don't know, just links on all those things. Some famous incidents related to this. So I mentioned that Thailand got taken off the internet when a shark bit the cable. The NSA has accidentally taken Syria off the internet before due to they were trying to tap the Syrian government's communications during the various wars and stuff going on over there, and they did it wrong, and Syria got taken off the internet. Oh, I guess it was Vietnam, sorry, not Thailand, that got taken off the internet. One of my favorite international organizations that most people haven't heard of is So everybody's heard of Doctors Without Borders, but there's Telecommunications Without Borders. And what they do is when a country like Syria goes off the internet, they parachute in there with satellite receivers and things so that people like journalists and things in a war zone can continue having internet and talking about what's going on, sharing that with the world. So Telecommunications Without Borders literally had people parachuting in there with satellite dishes to get people back on the internet. Okay, I don't know. So that's, I don't know, big picture, how physically the internet works. We're going to talk about more, I don't know, programming-ish related stuff here in a second, but any other questions on any of that? So your lab's going to be, again, connecting or figuring out how many computers in North Korea are connected to the internet. There are exactly 2 wires connecting North Korean internet to the rest of the world. One goes, neither of them are submarine cables. They're overland, one to China and one up to Russia. And I happen to know that both of those cables, there's absolutely no filtering on them, that if you're in North Korea and you have internet access, then you have better internet access than people say in like China. Okay, so back here. What we're gonna need to know is how the software works on the computers to make the internet all function and connect to each other. And every web server on the internet has what is called an IP address associated with it. IP addresses look like this. There are 4 numbers separated by dots, and each one of these numbers has the value of 1 byte, so it can be between 0 and 255. And if you clicked this link up here, you could see what your actual IP address is. There's no way to hide this from anybody because when you visit a web page, in order for that web page to send it back, the information back to you, it has to know what your IP address is. And so any web page that you go to, it can show you like where in the world that you are connecting from. So here, here's just a Google Maps showing here we are over here in Claremont. That we can't hide that fact. It's just something that has to be known in order for the information to get back to us. These things over here are called domain names, and these are much easier to remember than IP addresses. So most people use domain names instead of IP addresses. If you do the math, there's only 4.2 possible billion IP addresses in the world. There's a lot more people than that, though, so we can't have everybody connected to the internet fully. And we're very much running out of these IP addresses. If you take a look at the price of an IP address over time, as we're running out, the prices have been going up and up, rocketing quite a bit recently. And so if you're looking for weird investment opportunities, buying IP addresses is a potential gold mine right now. I know lots of computer science people doing that. Let's see. So in order to actually connect to the, say to Facebook or wherever you're connecting to, your connection goes through a bunch of routers. Those routers sit at like the endpoints of all these cables. They see what IP address you're trying to go to, and they send your information on to the next appropriate cable. And typically between you and any like web page that you're visiting, there's going to be between 10 and 20 different like routers, these other computers, 10 to 20 cables that your communication goes over, and no more than that. The overall networking stuff can get super complicated, and so actually like fully understanding all that in detail is like multiple graduate level networking courses. But in order for the purposes of this lab, all you need to know is really what an IP address looks like, and that there's at most 256 from 0 to 255 in each of these positions. And the lab will walk you through how to figure out how to locate what are the IP addresses for any particular country or for any particular organization. You'll do it for Claremont McKenna. Find all of our IP addresses. We have about 65,000, and you'll do it for North Korea. They have only 1,024. And then you'll basically just have a for loop connecting to all of those IP addresses, checking to see, is there a computer on the internet there? And it turns out there are exactly 16 computers in North Korea connected to the internet. Claremont McKenna, if you wanted to do that, there'd be well over 1,000, and in the tens of thousands. Question.
I know that there are a lot of people in North Korea using like the deep web in order to talk and communicate with other people in other countries. Is that not counts connecting with an IP address?
There are not a lot of people in North Korea doing it. They have like their own internal internet infrastructure where people have their own internal IP address. Those IP addresses are not, there is no like cable connecting that internal thing to the outside world. Graduate students in North Korea are allowed to have internet access, but they can't do it on like their own personal computer. They have to go to a library and access the internet there. So that's a major reason why like many North Koreans choose to go on to graduate schools, because once you have your master's degree, then you're allowed to connect to the internet. Any questions about anything? Probably more questions will come up as you're working through the lab. Feel free to go through and ask them. But that's the high level of everything. So yeah, stop that.